It was a crisp autumn evening in Washington, D.C. The city buzzed with anticipation as preparations unfolded for a special television broadcast, a rare appearance by President Donald Trump on America Speaks, the nation's most watched talk show. The show's host, Daniel Reed, was beloved for his calm presence and compassionate interviewing style. He wasn't flashy or loud. His quiet humility and thought-provoking questions had a way of touching hearts across camera. When the White House invitation arrived, Daniel hesitated. He never sought political headlines. But Trump's handwritten note piqued his interest. "Let's talk about gratitude. Something America needs now more than ever," Daniel agreed. Though a quiet unease lingered within him, on the day of the broadcast, the studio shimmered under bright lights, filled with both excitement and tension. Trump entered with his trademark confidence, warm, engaging, and genuinely curious. He shook hands with every crew member, thanking them personally. When he reached Daniel, the host's polite smile seemed to mask something deeper. As they sat across from one another, Daniel's fingers brushed the small leather bracelet on his wrist. Worn, faded, yet clearly meaningful. The cameras rolled. The crowd erupted in applause. Neither man knew that by the end of that night, their conversation would move millions to tears. "Mr. President," Daniel began, voice calm yet resolute, "you often speak about second chances and gratitude. Why does that message mean so much to you?" Trump leaned back thoughtfully. "Because I've seen how gratitude transforms people, not just in words, but in action. America needs more of that spirit." Daniel nodded, though his voice carried a faint tremor. They discussed kindness, unity, and the burdens of leadership. Trump spoke of veterans, farmers, and single parents who inspired him. The audience listened, captivated. Midway through, Trump looked across the table. "Daniel, I've followed your work. You've given a voice to ordinary Americans, something I deeply respect." Daniel smiled modestly. "Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just doing my part." Trump motioned to an aide, who handed him a small velvet box. He placed it gently before Daniel. "This is a token of appreciation from me, and from those who believe in what you do." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Daniel froze, staring at the box but not touching it. "Go ahead," Trump urged kindly. "Open it." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Mr. President, I can't accept this." The room fell silent. Cameras zoomed in. "Why not?" Trump asked softly. Daniel's voice wavered. "Because this gift reminds me of something, or rather, someone I lost long ago." Curiosity swept through the audience. Trump leaned in. "Something you lost." Daniel nodded slowly. "It's not about the value of the gift, sir. It's about what it represents. Years ago, I made a promise. Accepting gifts like this would break it." Trump folded his hands. "Would you tell me about that promise?" Daniel hesitated, gripping his bracelet tightly. "It's not easy to talk about on live television." "Maybe that's exactly why you should," Trump said gently. Daniel drew a deep breath. His eyes glistened. "Years ago, I met a young boy who changed my life. His name was Ethan Parker. He taught me what gratitude truly means. The day he died, I promised I'd never take anything for myself again." A quiet gasp spread through the audience. Trump sat still, listening. Daniel continued, voice trembling. "I met Ethan while covering a story at a children's hospital. He was 12, battling leukemia, yet he smiled through everything. He'd say, 'Being alive today is the best gift I'll ever get.'" Daniel paused, emotion thick in his throat. "He once asked me, 'Do you think people remember what they get or what they give?' I told him I wasn't sure. He laughed and said, 'Then promise me you'll find out.'" Daniel raised his wrist, showing the bracelet. "When he passed, the nurses gave me this. He made it himself. It says, 'Be thankful, not proud.' That's why I can't accept your gift, sir. I'm still keeping my promise to Ethan." Trump's expression softened. "Daniel, that's one of the most powerful things I've ever heard." Daniel smiled faintly. "It's just the truth, sir." Trump nodded slowly. "People think gifts are about money or power, but what you've said reminds me the greatest gifts often cost nothing." He paused, reflecting. "Years ago, before politics, I knew a janitor in one of my buildings. Quiet man, always smiling. I once asked why. He told me, 'Because I'm grateful to still be part of something bigger than myself.' When he retired, he gave me his badge. I still keep it to remind me that dignity comes from purpose, not position." Daniel's eyes softened. Trump glanced at the velvet box. "Maybe I brought you the wrong kind of gift." Daniel frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Trump smiled. "Maybe it wasn't something to give, but something to share." The tone shifted. No longer host and guest, just two men, connected through gratitude and memory. "Ethan sounds like an extraordinary boy," Trump said quietly. "He was," Daniel replied. "He taught me that even short lives can leave long legacies." "Do you still visit the hospital?" Trump asked. "Yes, every year on his birthday. I bring books, toys, or sometimes just my time. It's how I say, thank you." Trump nodded with admiration. "That's beautiful." Daniel hesitated, then asked softly, "Mr. President, do you ever get tired of being misunderstood?" Trump chuckled. "Every day, but I've learned you can't control how people see you, only how you act. Gratitude doesn't need an audience." Applause rose from the crowd. Trump glanced at the box again. You know, this wasn't an expensive gift, but maybe it's better you didn't open it. Maybe it wasn't meant to be owned, but remembered. What's inside? Daniel asked curiously. Trump smiled faintly. Something that represents the same promise you made to that boy. Daniel hesitated. Should I open it? Not now, Trump replied. When the time feels right. The show ended in reverent silence. Crew members wiped away tears. Trump shook Daniel's hand. Thank you. You reminded me what true leadership means. Daniel smiled. And you reminded me what humility looks like from power. Later that night, alone in his dressing room, Daniel finally opened the velvet box. Inside was not jewelry, but a handwritten letter. His heart skipped a beat. It read, to Daniel Reed. Some build towers that touch the sky. Others build bridges that touch hearts. You are the latter. Inside is a key, not to a building, but to a room in the White House dedicated to children who inspire change. I want to name it after Ethan Parker. His story deserves to live on. Daniel's hands trembled. Beneath the letter lay a small brass key. Tears streamed down his face as he pressed the bracelet to his forehead. Trump hadn't given him a gift. He'd given Ethan's memory a future. Ethan, Daniel whispered, your light just reached the world. By morning, the episode had gone viral. Millions watched clips of Daniel's trembling voice. He taught me the meaning of gratitude. Hashtags like hashtag Ethan Parker Room and hashtag Be Thankful, Not Proud spread across social media. The White House soon confirmed a new initiative, the Ethan Parker Room, a space honoring children who show courage, creativity, and kindness. Trump's official statement read, some stories deserve to be remembered forever. That evening, Daniel quietly visited the children's hospital once more. The same halls, the same smell, now lined with photos of smiling kids. The nurse recognized him. You must be proud, she said softly. Daniel smiled through tears. No, just thankful. As he stepped outside, he looked up at the night sky. You did it, buddy, he whispered. Somewhere beyond the clouds, it felt like Ethan was smiling back. 2 days later, Daniel received a call. Mr. Reed, this is the White House. The president invites you to a private event this Friday, the dedication of the Ethan Parker Room. He asks that you bring Ethan's bracelet, and, if possible, something that once belonged to him. Daniel held the bracelet close, his voice trembling. I'll be there. When Friday came, the White House glowed in quiet elegance. Reporters gathered outside, but inside, the moment was sacred, private, and filled with gratitude. Trump greeted Daniel personally at the White House entrance, his tone warm and genuine. I'm glad you came, he said with a smile. You were right, Daniel. Gratitude isn't about what we give, it's about what we remember. Daniel smiled softly. Thank you for doing this, Mr. President. It means more than you know. Trump led him through the quiet corridors until they reached a newly restored room painted in gentle shades of blue and white. Murals of children flying kites adorned the walls, and above the door gleamed golden letters, the Ethan Parker Room, where courage lives forever. Daniel stopped in his tracks, emotion flooding his face. His eyes shimmered with tears. This is for him, Trump said softly, and for every child who shows us what real strength looks like. Unable to speak, Daniel placed his hand over Ethan's name and whispered, You made it, buddy. Inside, sunlight poured through wide windows. The space wasn't just a hospital room, it felt like a sanctuary. Shelves brimmed with books, paints, and musical instruments. A plaque on the wall read, Inspired by Ethan Parker, who taught us that gratitude can outlive pain. Daniel walked slowly, his fingertips brushing across the tables and chairs, as if absorbing the hope in life that would soon fill the space. Trump stood beside him quietly. We plan to host storytelling sessions here, he explained. Children will record their dreams and stories. We'll share them across the nation, real voices of courage. Daniel smiled through his tears. That's exactly what Ethan would have wanted. Trump nodded. Then let's make it happen. Moments later, as photographers began to enter, Trump handed Daniel a folder. Inside were photos of Ethan's parents. The hospital had these stored away, Trump said gently. They reached out, they're coming here today. Daniel froze. They don't know I'm here, do they? Trump shook his head. I thought it would be better as a surprise. Moments later, a middle-aged couple entered, tired but full of quiet grace. The woman gasped when she saw Daniel's wrist. You're the reporter, she whispered, trembling. The one Ethan always talked about. Daniel nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. He changed my life. Tears streamed down her face. And now, he's changing the world. Trump quietly stepped aside to give them privacy. Ethan's mother, Laura Parker, took Daniel's hands in hers. You have no idea what this means to us, she said softly. Daniel's eyes glistened. Your son taught me everything I know about gratitude. Laura looked around the room, touching the plaque gently. He always wanted to make other kids smile. I never thought the President of the United States would make that dream come true. Trump bowed his head respectfully. Ma'am, your son reminded this country what real courage looks like. That's something we should never forget. Her husband, Mark, added in a trembling voice. He once said he wanted to reach the White House someday, not to live there, but to bring hope there. The room fell into a moving silence. Daniel whispered, "Well, now he has." Laura smiled through tears. "When he got sick, he made me promise I'd keep smiling for him. But today, for the first time, I don't have to pretend." She turned to Trump. "Thank you, Mr. President. You didn't just honor Ethan, you honored every parent who's ever lost a child." Trump nodded solemnly. "That's what gratitude does. It turns loss into legacy." Daniel turned away, overwhelmed. A soft breeze drifted through the curtains, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as though Ethan himself was there, whispering, "Keep your promise, Mr. Reed." Later that evening, after everyone left, Trump asked Daniel to stay behind. "There's something I want to show you," he said, guiding him to a small cabinet. Inside was a glass display case with a single velvet stand. "I thought this might belong here," Trump said quietly. Daniel froze. "I can't," he whispered. Trump placed a hand on his shoulder. "You already carry him in your heart, but the world deserves to see his message." Daniel looked down at the worn leather bracelet, its faded words, "Be thankful, not proud," still visible. With trembling hands, he removed it and placed it gently inside the case. Tears filled his eyes as Trump said softly, "You've done something few ever do. Daniel, you turned pain into purpose." Daniel exhaled shakily. "He did that, not me." Trump smiled faintly. "Then maybe that's the truest kind of leadership, the kind that keeps giving, even after it's gone." The bracelet shimmered under the light, a simple band of leather, now immortal. Days later, the dedication aired across the country. News anchors didn't talk about politics, they spoke about compassion, gratitude, and the courage of a child. Letters poured in from across America. A 9-year-old girl named Grace wrote, "I saw Ethan's story, and now I help my mom with her medicine every day because he taught me to be thankful." A veteran wrote, "I lost faith in people until I saw that episode. I remembered what I fought for." Even rival networks replayed the scene where Daniel refused the gift. One anchor said, "Sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is say no." Trump himself changed. In speeches, he often mentioned Ethan and Daniel. "America doesn't just need success," he said once, "it needs heart." Soon, hospitals across the nation began giving out leather bracelets engraved with Ethan's words. People didn't call Daniel a celebrity, they called him the man who remembered. Then one day, Daniel received another letter from Grace. This time, it was her last. "Dear Mr. Reed, my mom says I might not have much time left, but thank you for telling Ethan's story. It makes me brave. If I see him in heaven, I'll tell him he did great. Love, Grace." Daniel wept. When he called the hospital, the nurse said gently, "She passed last night. Her last words were, 'Tell Mr. Reed to keep smiling for us.'" That night, Daniel returned to the Ethan Parker room. He sat by the display case, gazing at the bracelet. "Ethan," he whispered, "your story just made another child brave." Trump appeared at the doorway, holding Grace's letter. "Then maybe," he said softly, "it's time we expand the room. Make it a foundation." Daniel looked up. "A foundation?" Trump nodded. "The Ethan Parker Foundation for children like Grace. Let's make sure their voices never fade." Daniel's tears fell again. He'd love that. "Then let's get to work," Trump said. Within months, the Ethan Parker Foundation for Courage and Gratitude was born, funding hospitals, art programs, and scholarships for children fighting chronic illnesses. Daniel became its honorary director. At the launch, Trump spoke passionately, "This isn't about politics. It's about people, about the children who teach us courage when we've forgotten our own." Daniel followed with a quiet, heartfelt speech. Ethan and Grace never saw the world beyond hospital walls, yet they changed it. Gratitude isn't about having everything, it's about cherishing anything. Applause thundered. Over the following year, hundreds of children joined the foundation's storytelling project. One video went viral, a boy smiling through pain, saying, "I may not have much time, but I have today." Daniel often thought, one story lights another, one heart heals another. A year later, he and Trump visited a new hospital funded by the foundation. In the children's ward, a video played, dozens of young voices saying, "Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Mr. Reed. Thank you, Mr. President." When the screen faded, one boy whispered, "We're not sick, we're strong." Even Trump wiped away a tear. "They're stronger than all of us," he murmured. Daniel smiled. "They always were." A little girl approached, handing Daniel a handmade bracelet. "It's for you," she said shyly. "I made one for Mr. Trump too." Trump grinned. "Well, that makes us teammates." Daniel looked at the colorful bracelet and whispered, "Full circle." For the first time, he wore a gift again, not from pride, but from gratitude. Months later, Daniel announced his retirement from America Speaks. Trump returned as his final guest. "You're refusing any gifts this time," Trump joked. Daniel chuckled. "Maybe just one, a memory." As the show ended, Daniel turned to the camera. Gratitude isn't a reaction, it's a choice. Don't wait for a reason to say thank you. Be the reason someone else can. Applause filled the room. Trump leaned in and said, "Daniel, you didn't just interview America, reminded it of its heart." Years later, Daniel, now gray-haired, visited a school funded by the foundation. A young boy stood up and read his essay aloud. I want to be like Ethan Parker because he didn't need to be big to change the world. Daniel smiled through tears. You already are. Before long, he received a handwritten note from a nurse who once cared for Ethan. Before he passed, Ethan told us, Mr. Reed will make the world thankful one day. He was right. Time passed. Baron Trump, now grown and serving as a foundation ambassador, invited Daniel to the reopening of the Ethan Parker room. Inside, next to Ethan's original bracelet was the colorful one from the little girl, a plaque beneath Reed, one gift refused. Millions of hearts opened. Daniel's voice broke. Beautiful, he whispered. Baron smiled. My father always said, gratitude outlived us all. Daniel nodded, tears in his eyes. He was right. Years later, after Daniel's passing, a memorial was held in that same room. Trump, now elderly but steady, stood before the crowd. Daniel taught us that gratitude isn't something we give, it's something we live. And Ethan Parker started it all. He placed a white rose before the bracelet case. Be thankful, not proud, he said softly. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating the room, the bracelets, the photos, and the smiling faces of every child who had been touched by the story. Outside, the world moved fast and loud, but within those walls, one truth still echoed. Gratitude outlives pain. Kindness outshines power, and one promise can change the world.